Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be doing a review of the INNOCN 27M2U. If at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's jump into it. Alright, right off the bat, this is a 27-inch monitor with a resolution of 3840 by 2160p, aka 4K. Now the PPI, or pixels per inch, essentially how crisp and clear the image or text on screen is actually going to be to your eyes. This is very, very good here at a whopping 163 pixels per inch. 163 PPI, that is very good. This means even if you're looking at very small text, it is going to be very crisp and clear. Images, video, anything like that is going to appear very crisp and clear. No pixelation is really noticeable at any point using this at an average viewing distance, which is probably about just this far away. I have mine fairly close, so even at that viewing distance, no pixelation. Now, as for the panel type, this is really the main feature of this monitor. Now, this is an IPS panel, which means you're gonna have great viewing angles, great colors, and fantastic reliability over the long term. However, almost all IPS panels have a small contrast ratio, most of them being about 1,000 to 1, meaning that they have very poor black levels. This IPS panel, however, is Mini LED lit, which basically means it can have full array local dimming, meaning that the black levels will be much deeper. But we'll go into that more in the contrast ratio and local dimming section, but right now, let's talk about the refresh rate. Now, the refresh rate hits a maximum refresh rate of 60 Hertz. That's pretty much what you would expect for productivity, work-oriented, and professional type work, which is really what this monitor is centered towards. That being said, if you do want to game on this, even though this doesn't have any variable refresh rate, there was like no screen tearing at all. So I did test this out doing some gaming on this, no screen tearing, so that's surprising, but obviously not really made for gaming. So let's move on to brightness because there's a lot of big claims here. Let's see if those are legit. Now, INNOCN claims 700 nits of brightness in SDR and 1000 nits of peak brightness in HDR. Now, those are very, very big claims, and I've reviewed another INNOCN monitor that was way far off of its rating for brightness. So how does this one do? Well, after testing the SDR brightness with local dimming on, but a 100% window, this managed to hit 650 nits. That is a very bright, that's incredibly close to the 700 nit rating, and if you messed around with some stuff, bumped your contrast ratio, then you could definitely get it to 700 nits. But average viewing, how most people would view this, how most people would use this monitor, 650 nits, that's insane. That means if you have direct sunlight, you basically do not have to worry about your lighting situation or what room you're placing this or what area or direction you're placing this. It doesn't matter. This is going to be viewable and it's going to be incredibly vibrant and stunning because this panel is absolutely beautiful. This may be one of the prettiest IPS panels I've ever used. All right, now for the HDR. You would expect with a 1000 nit rating for peak brightness in HDR, then you get local dimming and a wide color gamut, you would expect the HDR experience to be very good. And well, honestly, it's just not that great. Now, the HDR experience isn't awful. However, when comparing to the SDR experience, which is insanely bright, the HDR experience, it just falls short. When switching this into HDR, I doubt that it's really hitting that 1000 nits of peak brightness. Very small highlights, but I don't think it's even hitting that. This bumps it down to around 350 nits in a 100% window, so what you're actually going to be viewing most of the time, obviously not taking into account highlights, is going to be about 350 nits. Now, the experience in SDR is absolutely unbelievable. It is so unbelievably beautiful that the HDR experience, it's just not that great. INNOCN has not had a good history with HDR, so I don't really expect it to be great, and I kind of expected that. I did not expect this to hit 650 nits in SDR content using this how you would normally use it, so I am incredibly impressed, as well as very impressed with the local dimming. So even though the HDR is not the best in the world, the SDR is out of this world, so it's a full pass. All right, but let's move on to colors. This is an important section because this is definitely centered to more professional style work. So first of all, this covers 99% of both the Adobe RGB and the DCI-P3 color gamut, which is great. And one thing to talk about is that this is pre-calibrated from the factory, and I'm just gonna say it is very good. The calibrations from INNOCN have always been very good in my experience, and this, well, it's the same here. It's very good. Out of the box, you can immediately start photo and video editing. I did quite a bit of photo and video editing on this monitor, and it was fantastic. Actually incredible how good this is when compared to, Dell's high-end monitors, LG's high-end monitors that are also made for photo and video editing with very good colors and things of that nature. But most of those monitors from Dell and LG will not have incredibly high brightnesses, as you would expect, because when most people do color accurate work, they're not going to have it at 650 nits, but around 250, 300 nits of brightness. But I much more prefer this over a lot of the competition here. And this is, at this point right now, kind of in its own little section because of price and what you get and all these weird things that combine into actually a very good product. So if you are wanting to use this for productivity with photo and video editing, color accurate work, this is fantastic for that. But if maybe you're not into that, another use case scenario that I could see myself using is maybe you're just doing more workflow type stuff, using Word a lot of the time. Maybe it's a home office situation, but you want that PPI, that resolution, to not have small text be pixelated. So just something nice to work on. But then after work hours, you're watching Netflix, YouTube, really using this as an amazingly stunning, consuming content kind of monitor, if that makes sense. This is an absolutely beautiful display, and it's also solidified my opinion that OLED may not just be the future for monitors, but mini LED IPS lit monitors, those could be, well, they could take over. But let's talk about that. Let's move on to contrast ratio and local dimming. So firstly, almost all IPS panels, including the new IPS black technology panels that LG produces, those don't have an amazing contrast ratio, but most IPS panels have a 1000:1 contrast ratio. Most VA panels have between a 3000:1 and a 5000:1 contrast ratio. Now there's no specs out there for the contrast ratio. INNOCN did not rate this for a contrast ratio, but this is better. It has deeper blacks than a VA panel. Now obviously that's not natively, but that's through the local dimming, which is, maybe it's native, I don't know how that's considered, but when you have local dimming on, this has deeper blacks than a VA panel, and they look absolutely stunning. And it's just mind-blowing how good this is while still being an IPS panel, because you don't have any issues with burn-in like you would an OLED, and you still get those colors from an IPS panel and the viewing angles that you would not get on a VA panel. This is just overall a really great package that's reliable and that you can actually have for like 10 years. Okay, so the local dimming. This has 384 dimming zones, which is a lot more than we've really ever seen on IPS panels, at least on this channel, and especially at not a crazy price point. This is an affordable monitor. However, even with only 384 zones, it's a lot, but it's still a little. However, it's tuned very well, which was surprising, again, because I didn't expect that coming from INNOCN, but they did quite well here. Also, during testing, watching movies, content, videos, and stuff like that, and even gaming on this thing, you don't really notice the local dimming turning on and off a whole lot. If you do a controlled test, you absolutely will see it. However, in most of the content that I watched, I didn't really notice it, and I was looking for it. Out of the box, local dimming is off, I believe, but if you turn it on, it's in the most aggressive setting that it will be in. And that basically means if you are on a majority black screen, or if part of the screen is the majority a darker area, and then there's a little bit of white or a little bit of light stuff, like maybe the edge of a YouTube video when you have kind of the play bar up, or your mouse is over in a dark corner of the screen, it's going to be aggressive with the local dimming, meaning that those areas will be dimmed more than it would lighten them. So it's going to pick more up on the dark areas than the light areas if that's what the majority is. Now, you can actually change this, which is awesome, at a slider from 0 to 100, and this is called in the menu system backlight contrast. Now that's, probably not the right name. That's probably just a translation slip up right there. However, this can kind of tune it. So if backlight contrast is at 100%, then it will pick more up on those smaller, lighter areas, and it won't get as dark in areas that are not completely dark. Now, with 384 zones, this isn't a massive amount. So it does kind of have to pick between, okay, this is going to be turned very dim, this is going to be turned light. However, it still did it amazingly well. Now, obviously, sometimes there will be sections where it's like, okay, this is darker than it really should be, because obviously, I would say about 3 times the local dimming would be absolutely perfect. That's where you're really competing directly with OLEDs, which is something that we're gonna see in the future here. But I mean, this is nitpicking. For 95% of the people that are gonna be using this that want those black levels, this local dimming does an unbelievably good job. And the fact that you actually have quite a bit of play with how aggressive you want it to be, that's very cool. I also do want to say almost all of the time I have local dimming on, so it's not something that you're only going to want to turn on with content that maybe movies or Netflix. This is something I leave all the time on, except obviously during testing. Now, before we move on, for backlight bleed, my monitor had absolutely none, which is great, and we expect that. But let's move on. All right, now for the very few of you that do want to do some light gaming on this, we are going to go over that really quick. The response time, ghosting, and input lag. Let's talk about it. Firstly, the response time is actually faster than I expected. Now, do keep in mind this is only 60 hertz, but the ghosting was actually pretty good. You're not really going to have an issue with ghosting, especially because this is not a gaming monitor, but it's not bad. So if you do want to game on this, you're not going to have issues with ghosting. The one thing that you will have issues with is the input lag. Now, the input lag is fast enough where if you're doing basic tasks, editing, stuff like that, you're not even going to notice it. But when you get in more fast-paced games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, you are definitely not going to be hitting the highest KD that you possibly can, just because that input lag is higher than you would expect from a gaming monitor. So don't expect that this is a do-it-all monitor. It is not. However, if you do want to do some Red Dead or some Age of Empires, things like that, more slower paced games that are just beautiful because they do look absolutely stunning on this panel. It is gorgeous. However, more slower paced games will be good for this. Now, like I did mention, there's like no screen tearing. So the actual image quality is very, very good in game. And it kind of makes you want to game on this a little bit more. But again, fast-paced games, probably not the move. All right, now for the menu system and controls. We've talked about this before in a different INNOCN than I've reviewed the 40C1R, but this panel in specific has 5 different buttons on the front right bottom chin, and those are menu, up, down, exit, and then an off, a dedicated off button, which you guys know that I love. However, this one, you have to click it twice to turn it off, so it does not make sense. The menu has to come up for you to turn the monitor off. Having a dedicated power button that you have to click twice just doesn't make sense. But then getting used to all the buttons, well, it's not fun. There's definitely a learning curve. Even when you get used to it, it's not fun to use. It's not quick. So they definitely need to move to a joystick here. Now, the menu system itself is pretty bad. It's not quite as bad as some of the menu systems that we've seen from Samsung, but overall it's not good. You do have quite a bit of settings, which I really do enjoy. However, many of them are kind of named incorrectly. And I do say incorrectly with an asterisk because some of these things don't actually have like dedicated names that everyone has to use. However, it does seem like most of these names or phrases were put into like a Google translator and they didn't come out right. As well, some of the modes have on and off switches that will show up on the menu, but really you can only choose from one of the 4, but they all have on and off switches, so only one can be on. That just doesn't make sense as a user interface. So the menu system is definitely not perfect. It will definitely take you some time playing around with things to actually understand what is it doing. But overall, I mean, it works. You definitely have to get used to it, but it's not a deal breaker. Now, as for Vesa compatibility and internal speakers, this is compatible with 100mm by 100mm Vesa mount, so this is pretty easy to mount. I also do believe it comes with screws pre-installed in the back, so that's great. And for internal speakers, this does have internal speakers, and they're actually quite good. They get pretty loud. They don't rattle at any volume level, which is very impressive considering most monitor speakers are awful. As well, they have just about as much bass as you can ask for in monitor speakers that are integrated that do not have a dedicated sub. So overall, I'm impressed here. But again, this is just for, you know, tutorials. You're not gonna wanna jam out to music on these, although they are definitely on the better side. And I did listen to a little bit of music with them. So, you know, pretty good overall. All right, but let's talk ports. This has one DisplayPort 1.4, 2 HDMI 2.0s, a USB Type-C with 90 watts of charging, absolutely amazing, and then a 3.5mm audio out. Now, for ports, this is exactly what I wanted. For the price point, 90 watts of charging, USB Type-C, If you guys are running a laptop, MacBook Pro, and you want to do one cable for display and charging, and then you want to plug in an Xbox to this, and then you want to have your PC, your home office PC, I mean, this is a good amount of ports. You got HDMI 2.0, DisplayPort 1.4, and Type-C with 90 watts of charging. There's not a whole lot more you can ask for at this price point, so they hit all my boxes for that. Great job. Now, moving on to the stand and build quality, the build quality overall feels good. The materials they used are good. The fit and finish is pretty good. Not on par of LG and Dell and companies like that, but very, very close. But it looks interesting. I don't hate it, but it looks kind of like a gaming monitor. I don't really know what's going on here. It definitely does not look like an office monitor. It's kind of silver. It does not look bad, but it's got RGBs on the back. They don't get too bright, so I'm not even gonna really talk about those, but it definitely does not look like a work-oriented monitor. However, it could probably pass for one if it's sitting on your desk in your office. I don't think people are gonna be like, whoa, what is that? However, it just looks funny. However, the adjustability is absolutely fantastic. You have height, tilt, swivel, and rotation both to the left and to the right. So as far as adjustability, this is fantastic. And all of the movements feel pretty good. And it's got a little bit of cable management built in. Cable management's not the best. The ports are a little bit low for me, but overall very good. Okay, but now probably the most important section of the entire video, price and value. Now at the time of filming this video, this is listed on Amazon for $699.99, so almost $700, but it's currently on sale. But at the price around $700, it's base price, what it's listed for, I mean, that's a great price. If I had to price this, I would say it's between like $650 and $850. If it was something from Dell or LG, I would say it's probably closer to $1,000 or a little bit over $1,000. For the price, you're getting a pretty unbelievably beautiful 4K display with local dimming, mini LEDs. We haven't really seen a whole lot of these out here. And then you get a nice wide color gamut, great accuracy out of the box, an overall great stand. You get a little bit of gimmicky things here and there, like the kind of strange looking build quality, but it's well made and it's got a lot of adjustability. And then you get a weird menu system. So that's kind of where you're saving a lot of money when compared to brands like LG, Dell, more name brand brands. However, the quality of the panel here, well, it's exactly the same. This is on par and it's very good. If you can snag one of these, especially on sale, this is an awesome display. So overall, do I recommend this monitor? Well, if you want a color accurate, super bright IPS panel with great black levels and local dimming that is also 4K and doesn't break the bank, then yes, this is a beast for the price. Again, if you want to check it out, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. This is an awesome monitor. I've absolutely loved testing this, and really local dimming, mini LED and IPS panels, that is the future, guys. This is the way. All right, this is Type-C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.